Have you ever felt like life is happening to you rather than for you? Maybe you felt like you're spending more time reacting to things than you are actually choosing your next move. There's always more to do, and it can feel like you never have enough time. And then you hear people talking about time management techniques and scheduling and structuring your day. And it can all just feel so far away, like yet another hurdle that you need to clear before you can have the life that you're after. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, behaviors can be hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Leviton, a board-licensed coach who has been helping people just like you create positive change in their habits and routines for over a decade. President Barack Obama said, "Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek." If you want change, it starts with a decision. It starts with you. It's that simple. Now, let's make it easy. When it comes to the differences between the people who achieve high levels of success in any area of life and those who don't, there is one thing that pops up over and over. People who find success do it deliberately. It's not by accident that they reach their goals. Rather, it is by design. And to talk about designing your life, today I'm speaking with Bobby Hobert. Bobby is a life design coach. He's on a mission to help entrepreneurs create a life of purpose, balance, and fulfillment. And he's also the host of the It's the Bearded Man podcast. I met Bobby at a weekly run group here in Austin, Texas, and we connected immediately over our shared values and vision for the world. In this episode, Bobby and I discuss the secret of routines and if it's a morning or an evening routine that's more important, the 4 steps that you can take to remove friction from your day-to-day life, how to create boundaries around your time, and most importantly, don't miss Bobby's point on how you can learn to get comfortable in the uncomfortable and why you should even start to seek discomfort in your life. All right, please enjoy this conversation with Bobby Hobert. What does it mean to be the designer of your life?
Oh, you just want to drop in, Paul. No easy way in. We're just going to drop in. So buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. Let's do this. To be the designer of your life, it means you're extremely intentional with every moment of every day. And even when I say that, I think people may hear that and think like, okay, so every second that I'm not doing something, I'm wasting time. It's not that. It's just being extremely intentional with how you're spending your time each day and being mindful and conscious of choosing to spend your time doing X rather than kind of letting the day unfold and not having clarity and direction on what to do. When you're the designer of your life, you know when to do what. You're very clear, you're very structured, you're very routine based. And I think when you have structure and you have routine, it helps you stay consistent, helps create accountability, and it helps you follow through on the aspects of your life that you've identified as important to you.
So I like the concept of extreme intention. And now it kind of brings up to me initially a paradox, because if I'm thinking about what my designed life would be, right? If I could vision board out my life right now and just be like, this is my dream life. I'm living on the beach, all this other stuff. This is what I'm doing. It would have as little structure and routines as
Yeah.
possible. So how do I kind of balance those two of like, isn't a life that is worth living? Like, don't I want to be free from all those restraints?
That's a great, that's a great question. This is where I think it's really about paying attention to like what works best for you, right? So I think it's important to have some ounce of structure. So let me give you an example. Like Monday through Friday, I'm extremely routine based, regimented. I wake up at the same time. I go to sleep at the same time. I work out at the same time. It's like very much the same on repeat. When the weekends come, there is no structure. I kind of don't have an alarm clock. I don't know when I'm going to work out. I kind of just free flow. So I think it's a mix of asking yourself and being self-aware enough to understand what works best for you And I think those days are great, Paul. Like if you want to kind of just free flow and listen to your intuition and kind of see how the day plays out, I think that's great. But if you look at the most successful people, and I'm not even defining successful people as like money or how big their businesses have been built, they are mindful of how they're spending their time. So you can be flexible. You can decide, I'm not going to have an alarm clock every morning and kind of just allow my body to wake up when it wants to. But the extremely detailed person would say, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and then I'm going to be in the gym by 6:30. That version of you who kind of wants a free flow might say, I'm going to wake up when my body naturally wants to wake up. And then I'm going to challenge myself to be in the gym within 30 minutes. That's the difference. It's like, it's still very intentional with like, you wake up and then you work out. It's just one person may really value kind of that free flow / they're in a season of life where they just kind of want to go with the flow. Whereas the other person may be every minute of every day needs to be calculated. And that's more me. Like I am regimented, but that's what gives me peace because I know the time is actually being maximized each day.
So many good points there. I like what you just said at the end there about that it gives you peace. Kind of the way I phrased that, it was actually kind of a trick question, I know, because the way I look at this is that restraints, routines, these things are actually freeing, and it's
Yes.
paradoxical, right? It's kind of the way that if you have bumpers on a bowling lane, they
Mm,
restrict where you can go. You can't get a gutter, but it actually makes you more likely to go to the pins. And if you have restriction on the foods that you can eat, yes, it feels restrictive, but it's freeing in the sense that you don't have to spend so much mental energy thinking about what am I going to eat every day. If someone who says like, well, I just don't eat carbs, the reason that that works is because they don't have to think every meal like, oh my gosh, what am I going to have, what am I going to have. It actually becomes freeing in a sense, even though it can feel restrictive. So I appreciate also that you brought up that it's like it's a personal thing. Everyone is a little bit different, and some people with it's kind of like a sliding scale of how regimented and how routine that we want to be. But regardless of what level that you play with it, there are power in routines for sure, right? It
mm,
just takes, we only have so much mental energy, we only have so much bandwidth. So when it comes to specifically routines, you just said that, okay, during the week, you're super routine, maybe not so much on the weekends. Do you see a difference in the types of routines and the time? So, like morning routine versus nighttime routine, week routine versus weekend routine. Do you look at these things the same or do you look at them as different entities?
mm. It's a great question. I say they're the same. They have a different effect on me depending on when they are, right? So like my morning routine has these multiple steps where the evening routine might be a lot low lift, where it's just like my evening routine is I do self-care routine, I get into bed and that's it. I don't have this like long-winded 8-step routine, right? But I see them as all as equal value. I think is another way to look at kind of your question is like, I don't value my morning routine more than I value my Saturday morning routine, which is no routine. It's waking up when my body wants to wake up. It's meditating if I have the time or going for a coffee walk first thing. I think they are all equal value and it kind of just like flows into this one system. And what you were saying earlier too is like when you have these routines, it also eliminates decision fatigue. How much energy and time are people wasting every day? Like, should I work out this morning or should I work out in the evening? Should I go here for lunch or should I go there? Should I make this for lunch or should I not? Like, people are just wasting so much time by not systemizing their life and allowing these decisions to be made already on autopilot, which then gives them more energy to focus on some bigger things. So I see all of these routines as equal value and they go hand in hand with one another.
So you brought up time management there, and I know this is one of the biggest things that you talk about, you teach, you everything that you do is all about time, which is
Mm,
great. But again, one of the paradoxes that I come up against, I love paradoxes. I'm always talking about paradoxes. One of the paradoxes is to me, it's like, how do I get better at time management when I don't have time? And being better at time management takes time. I have to write my schedule. I have to take the extra energy that I already don't have when I'm so busy to do all of the things that you're saying. You just had an 8-step morning routine, a 3-step nighttime routine, all of this stuff. It's like, how can I justify using that time when time is my most lacking resource already?
This is great. If you feel that way and you feel like there's just not enough time in the day, you have to ask yourself, if I keep at this pace, will anything ever change? So you're essentially a hamster on a hamster wheel running in circles, trying to create more time in your day, and it's just not happening, right? So anyone that thinks to pause for a moment to assess and audit their time management thinks I'm losing time. Bobby, I don't have an hour to sit down and like audit what is or isn't working. Like there's barely enough time. Well, you're wrong, because if you took a moment to actually audit and ask yourself what needs to be addressed, what needs to be fixed, where can I create routines and systems, you actually would create more time for yourself each day, week, and month. So it's not about, you see these things on social media, 8-step morning routine, 3-step evening routine, 5-step lunch. Like it's not about the actual steps. It's asking yourself, what do you actually need? And also being honest with yourself of, at some point you're taking on too much, right? You're saying yes to too many invites. You are people pleasing. You're trying to make sure everyone's good. Work wise, you're taking on too many projects, or you're not willing to speak up and say, hey, this is like way too much. I can't do this. So that's why you feel like you don't have enough time, because you're just constantly saying yes to more and more things. You have to hit the stop button, ask yourself what isn't working. What do I need in this moment, for you then to start getting a better grasp on your time? But to answer really the root of this question, which is, how do I get better at time? It's kind of what we've been talking about since the beginning of this conversation, which is, where can I create systems and routines in my day so that I know when to do things, so that I can habit stack certain tasks or routines, and that so it becomes frictionless for me to do these things. If you do that, you're inevitably going to create more time in your day. So it's not efficient to work out, then get ready for the work day, start working for an hour, meditate for 10 minutes, work for another 2 hours, go for a walk. It's like, how can you stack these things together so it's all in one swoop? So then by the time you sit down to work, it's like you have 3 hours to just focus and then get back on track. I think most people are just really distracted. They're distracted by life. They're distracted by their cell phone. They're answering texts at every moment. They're looking at their emails. They're looking at social media. We are our own biggest distraction, aka we are literally our biggest energy and time vampire, because we're not willing to ask ourselves what absolutely needs to change.
100% agree. But the word that you used that I really love there was frictionless, right? This is the Change Made Easy podcast. Everything is about how do we make things easy. And to me, that's all about removing friction. We often
Mm,
know what to do, but there's so many points of friction that slow us down and stop us that we end up not doing the thing, whatever the thing may be. So
mm.
I'm wondering if you could take us through, like, if you're talking to someone who's just getting started working with you, they're doing one of your programs or something like that, and they're just like scatterbrained all over the place. They're like, I know I want my time back. I know I have all of these big goals that I want to achieve. I want the fitness. I want the entrepreneurship. I want all of this stuff. But like right now, I've just like, I can't do it. I haven't been able to get it on my own. What is the first place you go to start removing friction?
Yeah. It's a 4-step process. I do this with my one-on clients. It's part of the whole course and community I'm building out right now that goes live next in May. 4 steps. First step is you have to audit. I said the word audit before, and it was kind of hinting at this, right? So audit yourself and ask what is or isn't working. You got to get clear and identify the things that are clearly a bottleneck or an issue, or things that you want to change in your life. You have to bring clarity to it for the change to actually happen, for you to better your time management. Step 2 is you actually have to ask yourself, what does the dream version of this look like for myself? Whether it's personal, professional, doesn't matter what aspect of your life, like best case scenario, what does this version of me look like? Now you have clarity on where you're trying to go, what the finish line looks like. Phase 3 is you need to reverse engineer by building out a custom calendar. When you build out the custom calendar, that's what's going to help you remove friction and resistance, because you're going to allocate time in your day, your week, your month, depending on the activity, the person, the habit, the routine. You're going to just build it into your system, into your calendar, so that you're not thinking about when to do this thing or when to prioritize them. And then fourthly, this goes back to the analogy about bowling and the guardrails, is you need to create a personal playbook, aka your boundaries book, your rules to live by. And this is what's going to help encourage you to stay on track, remove resistance, stay away from anything that is going to make you fall off track. So I think at a high level, if someone takes themselves through that process, they're inevitably going to get clear on where is time being wasted, who is wasting my time, how can I build, what is the better version of me look like? How do I build this into my life so that I don't have to think about it? So there's not this resistance of like, oh, I got to go to the gym today, but I don't know what time. Remove all that. I'm going to the gym Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. And then lastly, right, when you create these personal boundaries, one of your boundaries may be, I'm allowed to skip a day at the gym, but I can never miss 2 days in a row. So now that's keeping you on track. So I would say if one takes themselves through that process with any aspect of their life, they're inevitably going to come out the other side feeling so much better in terms of in control, while also at the same time taking back their time management.
What is in your personal playbook?
It's great. Right now, it's a couple things. Ever since I left my full-time gig, January 15th, I kind of built in this new set of rules for me to live by because I was leaving my full-time gig. I was now going full-time on myself. As you know, as an entrepreneur, like that's not guaranteed money coming in. You got to find a way to make sure you're making ends meet. So some of those rules, those playbook boundaries that I created for myself, one is hard start and stop working time of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. It's taking off one full day per week. As of recent, it's been the entire weekend taking off. It's making sure that I'm carving out time for at least 2 social things per week, one of which being the Danny Miranda's Run Club every Tuesday. Another social thing could be a dinner with a group of people, a one-on-one walk with someone. Those have been some of the boundaries, the playbook rules that I've created that I've been living by for the last 60, 75 days. And that's kept me on track for making sure that I'm actually carving out time for my business and myself, not getting distracted, going to this coffee meetup, this walk, this workout class. And it's allowed me to show up as a better version of myself in personal and professional, making sure that neither of them are being neglected.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I always like to make this super tangible. Like, what does this actually look like? And it's interesting as you're saying that, you're like, okay, I have boundaries around how much time I will spend socially, but I
Mm,
also have boundaries around how much time I will spend at work. And it all comes from something that you alluded to before, which is knowledge of self, right? When you talked about that
mm,
extreme intention right at the beginning, and you talked about, taking people through that audit of yourself. All of this comes back to knowing yourself. What do I truly need? And that to me is one of those things that sounds simple, but is really the most complicated thing out of all because
please.
so many of us don't actually know ourselves. So, how do you start to even know what you want? What leads you down this path to start to grow and to want more when we're so disconnected from ourselves? Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds, but right now I have to ask you for a huge favor. If you're getting value out of this episode so far, take 2 seconds and share it with a friend. I mean, right now, literally, hit the little share button and send it in a text to your roommate or your cousin or your mom or your brother or your sister. Seriously, spread the love. If you like what you're hearing, then that's the best way that you can show support for this show. Because maybe you're like Eliza Kay, who said, "This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me." Or you're like Dalton, who said, "Paul is an amazing host, and his podcast is a must listen." Don't you want to share this awesomeness with your friends and family? Don't be a gatekeeper. It only takes a second. It helps me grow and reach a new audience, and you seem like a genius friend who recommends new, awesome podcasts. We all win. All right, go send that text. And now, let's get back to the show.
Yeah. I think you first have to change your mindset on thinking that prioritizing yourself is selfish. If you don't prioritize yourself first, nobody else is going to do it. So I unapologetically will always prioritize my intuition, my initial gut feeling, my emotions, always. Like, even if I'm letting someone down, family member, loved one, if it is not going to serve me, I will simply pass. I will create the space. I will say no. I am unapologetic about that. So I think when you have that frame of mindset, which is like, I'm always going to do what is in my best interest, which then ripples to me showing up as the best version of me, to my friendships, my relationships, to my community, you're allowing yourself to go down this path of self discovery. From there, it's truly about listening to that almost inner child of like, what am I curious to learn more about? What are my interests? What are the things that I want to do? You have to truly just dip your toes in, see what your interests are. And then from there, I think it really allows you to go deeper on the things you've identified as important to you. But the reason, I think what you were saying earlier, I think too many people are prioritizing people pleasing. They are afraid to say no. They don't create boundaries for themselves. So their time and energy is being just completely depleted, doing things they don't want to do, or being pulled in directions that they actually don't want to fall through on.
It's so powerful there for anyone listening. The piece that I really want to expand on is what you said, like, I will unashamedly show up for myself.
Yeah.
I choose myself over everyone else. And that can seem selfish, right? That's exactly sounds like the definition of selfish. But right after that, you said, so that that allows me to show up better for everyone else. And this is a huge, huge hurdle that people have to get over. The version of you that the world deserves is the best version of you. It is the lit
Yes.
up version of you, the healthy version of you, the happy version of you. That's the version that your parents deserve, that your kids deserve, that your partners deserve. So when you're doing for yourself, you're actually doing for them, again, paradoxically. And
Yes.
when you're doing for them and at the expense of yourself, you're actually almost being selfish because you're doing it to feel better, to not get into an argument or something like that, to save face in the moment, to the detriment of both you and them. But my question for you, Bobby, is how do you communicate that in your
Me.
relationships? Because you can know that and I can know that, and anyone listening can be like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But in that moment, that doesn't make it any easier to say no to your parent, your coworker, your boss, whoever it is.
Yeah. So let me say this first. If you don't set the boundaries with people, you're always going to play by the rules that they play by. So what is acceptable to them may not be acceptable to you. And of course, they're going to play by the rules that they think is okay until you say something. So you have to be willing to speak up. Otherwise, you're going to be communicated, treated, or whatever in the context of what they think is acceptable. And everyone has the right to have context of what works for them and what doesn't. I'll give you a great example that answers this question, which is my mom called me a couple weeks ago and it was like 9:30 a.m. my time, and 9 to like 2 p.m. every day. I don't have any calls intentionally so I can just drop into focus work. It's when I get my best work done. It's my time to really shine. She called me and I picked up just to see, she was calling with any reason, and there wasn't. She just wanted to catch up. So she started asking me a few questions, and I could tell that she was just calling to catch up. So as uncomfortable as it is, I said, Mom, is there any chance that I could call you back later this afternoon? Well, why? I'm really focused right now and I just want to like keep going with what I'm focused on, because I can feel myself right now just like wanting to get off this call, not being fully present with you. So I would appreciate, if you're okay, I would love to call you back later when I can just be fully present with you on the call. And she laughed. Absolutely. Called her back a few hours later and she joked with me about it. So the key is, one is just being very gentle in how you communicate. I think is really important, right? The tone, I think, is everything. How you communicate with your tone is directly the response you're going to get from the individual. So if I said, hey, Paul, I'm busy right now. Can we try this later? Versus, hey, Paul, I'm busy right now, but can we try this later? Like, you're going to feel a complete different shift in yourself if I don't give any explanation to why I just communicate like that, right? So I think it's about being gentle. It's about being very direct. It's about, if you need to, explaining like a very brief reason. I am someone that I believe you don't need to over explain yourself about why you have boundaries in place. Like, A boundary is a boundary, full stop. But if you want to give someone like a one sentence reason, please be my guest. But if you just learn to, when you listen to that intuition, that gut feeling like, ooh, that's not right, speak up, it's going to help set you up for success, because the more you do that, the more comfortable you get with setting boundaries. And I'm unapologetic. I had a guy try selling something to me the other day, knocked on our door, goes right into the full swing pitch. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I said, hold on one second. Middle of him talking, I said, I want to be respectful of your time. This isn't going to happen. So I'd rather you just keep going, because I don't want to waste your time, and I don't waste my time. All good, bro. Walked away. But I had that ability to stop him, even in the midst of him trying to sell me something.
Yeah, what I take out of both of those stories, the mom story and the door-to-door guy story, I've done door-to-door in the past before, and I would much rather someone just stop me before I wasted 10 minutes on a pitch so I could go to the next person. So I appreciate that. But what I took away from both of those stories is that the person you were saying that to didn't actually care. Meaning, you
Mm,
could have gotten in your head about that, like, oh, it's my mom. I can't say this. I can't do, yeah, I just got to let her rant. And then you would have been upset, probably with her, definitely with yourself. Oh my God, I can't believe I just wasted 30 minutes. You would have been kind of ticked at her. She wouldn't have understood why. All of this stuff would have spiraled out. Same thing with this guy. You could have just let him rant. You could have wasted time. And only thing that could have stopped you from speaking up, from saving your time, from upholding your boundary would be yourself. And
mm,
the other person hardly ever cares, as you said, as long as you're being polite, as long as you're communicating. And this is with so many other things. When we do what's best for us, people respect it. We always
yes.
think that people are going to judge us like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, if I tell them like I can't come out for drinks because I have to, because I'm going to go to the gym or something like that, like they're going to judge me or something. It's like, no, like usually people are going to go, wow, that's so cool, or awesome,
Yes.
call me after. And if they
Yes.
do judge you, then that's probably not the type of person that you want to be spending a lot of your time with anyway. So I just think that that's really cool. Like both of those stories kind of highlighted that.
And that's so important. I'm a true believer that the people who understand boundaries and how to set them will always respect the boundary. So I had a buddy of mine last week, 2 weeks ago. I'm going to visit some family and friends in California next week, and I sent him an invite for a dinner, and he sent me back this long-winded voice memo of why he can't make it, and I sent one back to him. And I said, Brian, I said, I didn't need the explanation. I get it, bro. Like, all I need is just, I can't make it, and I understand, right? So I do believe the people that understand and have boundaries for themselves will never question or dig deeper. The people who do not know how to set boundaries and are being swayed and pulled by the wind of any direction the world is pulling them from will always question you. So I think what you said earlier, which is like assessing that relationship and asking yourself, like, is this someone I want part of my life? Is it just a great flag to keep an eye out for?
So I'm glad you went there because we've used this word so often already, boundaries.
Yeah.
How do you even define that? Because I feel like this is one of those words right now that is in the zeitgeist, in the lexicon. It's narcissism and it's boundaries and it's whatever else. Like these things on TikTok and Instagram, like they get thrown around all the time. But
Yeah.
how do you define boundaries and what does it actually mean to have a boundary?
Yeah. To me, boundaries, to visualize it, is like where you draw the line in the sand of what is in bounds and what is out of bounds for you. There's no right or wrong. It's also going to change with seasons. And ultimately, it's essentially like what you deem as acceptable and what you deem as not as acceptable. It's a rule for me to live by, and it works best for me. So it's probably the easiest way to define what a boundary is. But ultimately, the reason the boundary exists is to protect your own well being, your own needs, your own values, your own beliefs.
Yeah, I really like that definition because these are these things. It's like everyone says boundaries and have a boundary, and it's important to have boundaries. But then you ask 10 different people and you get 10 different answers. And then it's very hard to how can we all observe other people's boundaries if we're not even talking the same language? And Dr. Becky Johnson, she wrote a book called Good Inside. I listened to her on a podcast the other day. It was really good, really good. But she said something I really liked, which is that a boundary has to do with me. So when I draw a boundary, it's about how I am letting you know that I am going to react. So I can't say, I have a boundary that you can't talk to me like that, because that's up to you. What I can say is that I have a boundary that if you talk to me like that, I'm going to end the conversation and leave the room. So it's
Mm.
about controlling our own border, a literal boundary of where like my capacity is. But that all speaks to a broader topic, which is just being okay doing uncomfortable things.
Mm.
So I'm curious, how do you get yourself to be able to do things that you're uncomfortable with, or to be comfortable with being uncomfortable?
I have been on a journey of consistent seeking of discomfort since 2016. When I graduated college, everyone was going corporate America route. I went the opposite route. I started my first podcast. I started driving Uber full time to pay the bills. I was in an uncomfortable position because I was doing something that was unorthodox, and people were just questioning my own decision of why I'm working for Uber, driving for Uber when I should be working a job. That was the moment that I began to quote unquote seek discomfort. Ever since then, I've continuously asked myself, like, what are my goals? What are my interests? What are these ideas that I want to follow through on? And no matter what the resistance is, trying that first boxing class and not knowing how to box, that's uncomfortable. Starting my first podcast when I have no idea how to use Final Cut Pro, that's uncomfortable. Going on a first date in 3 years after just completely neglecting your life, that's uncomfortable. But I know that on the other side of the comfort zone is where the most growth will come from. So now it's become such a consistent muscle of mine to like lean into the discomfort that I know I need to go through this to get to the other side where the growth is going to come. So I think for most people, they just need one, and they may already have it. They just need one example in their life where something was really uncomfortable. They followed through on it and they got through the other side. And you can just remember that framework and replicate it times 100 times everything that you're trying to do for yourself. And once again, I don't mean to repeat myself, but it creates peace within you because you're like, wow, I'm doing the thing I've always wanted to do. You know, how many people listen to this podcast, right? Change made easy. Change is hard, right? But there's somebody listening right now that wants to make a change in their career, their personal life, their relationship, their friendships, etc. But they're not willing to do it because it's uncomfortable. They don't know what's going to come on the other side. What's more uncomfortable is you sitting in the same position, thinking things are just going to change and they're not going to change. So if you want to make change easy, you need to just listen to that intuition of what you need to do. So I think it's part of life. It's going to happen in every aspect of your life. It's never going to be easy or comfortable, but through the discomfort, I do believe it brings comfortability because you're following through on doing the thing you want to do or changing the aspects of your life that you want to change.
Yeah, again, this is like our fifth paradox of the conversation, right? But you get comfortable by being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that's the whole struggle, and that's the whole crux of this entire podcast and everything. But I want to go backtrack a little, right? So as you said, you do uncomfortable things enough, it becomes a pattern. Your brain learns, okay, this thing isn't going to kill me, and I will be stronger at the end of it. This is the same analogy of lifting weights. This is all of the same stuff. And people who do this become people who do this more. And this is why you
Yes.
see people who are entrepreneurs or also ultra marathoners are also reading a ton of books. But take me back to that Bobby who just graduated college, who is
Yes.
about to not go for a big corporate career and put himself in an uncomfortable position to do a podcast and drive for Uber. Where did that initial impetus come when that hadn't been you for your entire life leading up to that? Like the first one, how did your mental self-talk go that allowed you to say like, I'm actually going to give this a try?
I was so very fortunate because when I decided I was going to do the podcast and drive Uber full time, I already truly felt like I knew the playbook of how this podcast career was going to go because one of my best friends that I grew up with, his name's Dylan Reese. He's a recording artist. I had saw when we were in high school when he started making music in his basement and everyone in high school was talking down about him. I had saw him go from that moment to then right when I graduated, he got books for his first tour and I went on tour with him. So I had the confidence and understanding of, I know the framework of how this is going to go. I'm going to start. People are going to question why I'm doing this. I'm going to stay consistent for a little while. I'm going to get better with time. I'm going to have some good wins. And eventually I'll get to my tour, either whatever that looked like, a big podcast production studio, big guests, whatever. So truly, Paul, if it wasn't for him, I don't know how I would have responded in those earlier stages. I just felt fully confident in taking that step because I knew what the quote unquote playbook was going to look like. So I just felt like fully confident in the decision. I think the only thing I was nervous about was how was I going to pay the bills. But fortunately, leading up to this moment, I had spent the past summer driving Uber full time, going into my senior year of college, and I was making great money. And I was like, I know I can pay the bills and work on my own time with this platform. And also I love meeting people. I honestly thought when I started driving Uber full time, I was like, I'll probably just do this for like 6 months to a year. And little did I know I'd go on to doing it for 3.5 years full time.
I mean, one, that's amazing because you did it by driving Uber, right? And I always say it's like you can literally do anything. The technology we have now, it's like that is literally the epitome of follow your dreams. You're like, I'm just going to follow my dream, and to fund it, I'm going to drive Uber. Literally anyone can do that. Whatever your thing is that you want to do. So like that's a perfect blueprint right there. But it's so interesting that you brought up seeing your friend, and that's fortunate. That's luck there. But actually just released an episode about this, about building self-efficacy. And Albert Bandura is a psychologist who coined the term self-efficacy. And he had 4 keys to what he said could help us build self-efficacy. One of them is mastery. So when you master something, it's kind of what you said before. When you do something, you see the result, you realize that it doesn't kill you, you realize that you got better, and then you want to do more hard things. You believe that you can do it. Again, self-efficacy being self-confidence, kind of believing that I can do something. But one of the other of the 4 is vicarious learning. And vicarious learning being seeing someone that's like you do the thing that you want to do. Meaning, like,
Mm,
it wouldn't have been the same for you to see a recording artist that you didn't know, right? There's plenty of recording artists that made it big that you're just like, okay, well, that's just Taylor Swift, or that's just Beyonce, or whoever the hell it is. But because you saw your friend in high school with you doing the thing, that's a different level of confidence it brings, because it's like, this isn't just a thing that's possible. This is a thing that's possible for someone like me. This is a
yes.
thing that's possible for someone that I literally know, and there's no reason that can't be me. And that brings up the power of community and why it's so impactful to put yourself in situations and in places where you are surrounded with people like that. Bobby mentioned before the run club. That's how he and I met. We go to a run club here in Austin, Texas every Tuesday morning. And it's just a way to socialize and to meet like-minded individuals, young men who are all doing big things and all mostly entrepreneurs and people doing stuff with their lives. But when I see someone in that run group and we're running the same 4 miles together, and then they tell me afterwards, oh yeah, I run a $10 million business, then I go, oh, okay, like that guy is just like me. Like he was
Yeah.
panting just as hard as I was in that run. He's not some super anything. Like he's a human. He's a normal person. So a lot of times we think of people who are extremely successful as being on a pedestal or being having something outside of us. And I think it's just as much as you can, if you can find someone who is, again, it's great to have mentors, it's great to have people that you look up to, but if you can find someone who's doing the thing that you want to do, who started where you started, or who is at your level and doing the thing that you want to do, someone your age, someone from your town, it becomes that much more impactful. And something that I'm curious how you think about this, Bobby, because I know that you have not been drinking for,
Mm.
I think, close to 2 or 3 years now. You haven't had alcohol. You can correct me on the exact timeline, but I'm curious how you see that both affecting and being affected by your social community.
Mm. Yeah. So June 27th, 2022 is when my partner and I decided to go on a 30-day sprint of no alcohol, and that evolved to 90, 60 to 90. We hit 100 days, and then it was like, why not just keep this rolling? And here we are, almost 2 years later. Um, that one decision just completely transformed my life. I already felt very confident about the life trajectory and very much deep in self-development and podcasting, creating and all that good stuff. But that just bought me back so much time, money, energy. It opened up a completely different version of myself. And It's interesting when I'm not saying you can't have a glass of wine. I don't judge anyone that drinks. I just was self-aware to recognize like it just wasn't a value add to me. I was somebody leading up to that moment who had spent 2 years being sober curious. I would do 30-day sprints of no alcohol. Then I would incorporate a rule where it was like every night that I went out, I could only have one drink. Then it was two drinks. Then I was back to as many drinks as I possibly wanted. I went all over the place for 2 years. But that's completely transformed. When I eliminated that, I started it to attract a different human being. I started attracting people that valued their own well-being first before anything else. And when you prioritize your well-being, it's so much easier to add in more of the pluses and minus out the negatives. The pluses being a sauna session, a cold plunge, going for a run, eating healthy. The minuses, toxic dopamine hits, alcohol, porn, drugs, like bad eating habits. It's easier for you to let those things go because you just recognize on the other side, I'm not going to feel any better. Yes, in the short term, I may feel a little bit looser. I may feel a little bit more alive, but that's not going to set me up for sustainable health. So through that process, yeah, I've completely attracted a completely different community. And I wouldn't say I was around a community that was encouraging, bad drinking decisions. That was still ultimately my choice if I wanted to consume a lot. But when you eliminate that from your community and you're around people, as I'm sure you can agree with, like that don't prioritize it, where they won't invite you out to the bar, but they'll invite you over to their sauna on a Friday night. Like that's like, you're speaking my language now, right? So I don't judge people if they drink. I'm just self-aware that both sides of my family have extensive alcoholism, and I know it absolutely runs in my blood. And I've just chosen to create a boundary, draw a line in the sand of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable for me. And um, it's been incredible, Paul. It's one of the best decisions I think I could have made for myself, and it has just created more time and energy to design the life that I want for myself.
What is the change that you want to see in the world?
I wrote about this journaling this morning on like the impact that I want to have on the world is like, I want people to be living a life with more intention because through it, they're going to be happier, better human beings, not only for the person they see in the mirror, but for their community. And that ripple effect will have such a profound impact on the world that we live in. Imagine if everyone was waking up every day, excited about the life they were living. They were in full alignment from the moment they woke up to the moment they went to sleep. Their day and calendar was just filled with things that are pluses, nothing minuses. They're in a career that fills them up. What a game changer, man. Like 3 months ago, I was working in a very toxic work culture. Now I feel light years different because I'm in control of my time. I want what I feel right now every day: fulfillment, peace, freedom, happiness. I want everyone to feel that.
So then, what is one action step that people listening to this episode can take right now, as soon as this episode ends, to start making that change easier?
Get out a piece of paper, notes app, write down all of the daily, weekly, monthly habits that are really important to you. Step 2 after that is build them into your calendar. Hold yourself accountable. Eliminate all of this overwhelm of, I want to work out 5 days of the week, but like some days I'm just not motivated. Eliminate all that. Build it into the calendar. Tell yourself when it comes, you're going to do it. And that will set you up for success. And if you want to go to step 3 is after you've identified the task that's important, after you've identified when you're doing it, create that boundary that's going to help you stay on track and identify anything that is going to pull you away from it.
Amazing, Bobby. Thank you so much for being here. I really love this conversation. For anyone who wants to connect with you and learn about what you're doing, what do you have going on? Where should they find you?
Yeah, head over to my website, bobbyhobert.com. That's where you can learn more about my courses, my offerings, or if you just want to check me out on social media, it's at Bobe, B-O, 3 B's, 4 A's, and a Y. Very long way to spell it. Or you can check out my podcast. It's the Bearded Man Podcast.
Amazing, Bobby. Thank you so much for being here. We'll have links to all of that in the show notes as well.
Paul, one request from your audience, if they're listening, if you are a first-time listener or you've listened to Paul 10, 20, 100 plus episodes, If you have not yet rated this man on Spotify or iTunes, that is my only ask from this conversation, is drop this man a review, because it takes a lot of time, effort, attention to create these podcasts. And if you're finding any ounce of value, it is the best way that you can throw $5 in his cap without throwing $5 in his cap. So please drop a review on whatever platform you're listening on for Paul.
You're a gem, Bobby. Thank you.
I got you.
So if you want to change, that happens when you make a decision. It happens by design. Bobby's passion for helping people design their life is exactly the type of thing that we need to see more of. In a world of infinite distractions, taking back control of your time is a skill that will pay you exponential dividends. So definitely check out Bobby and everything he's doing on his website, bobbyhobert.com, or check out his podcast, the It's the Bearded Man podcast. I've linked to both of those as well as his social media accounts in the show notes. And whether it's Bobby's 4 steps to removing friction, his tips on creating boundaries around your personal and professional life, or his advice on building out your calendar to start eliminating overwhelm so you can take massive action, I hope you take some of the tactics that Bobby gave here and put them to use today, because that is change made easy. Before you go, I just have to ask you for a huge favor. If you enjoyed or got value from this episode at all, then take a moment and leave a rating and review in the podcast app that you're listening or watching on. If you like the show and you want me to continue to create more episodes and be able to get awesome guests that will help make changing your life easier, then this is the best way you can show support. You can leave a 5-star review on iTunes like Eliza K, who said, "This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me." Thank you, Eliza. Or you can be like Dalton, who said, "Paul is an amazing host and his podcast is a must listen." Thank you, Dalton. And thank you to all of the over 100 people who have taken the time to rate and review this show 5 stars on iTunes, or the dozens who have left 5-star reviews on Spotify. It only takes a minute, and it helps me grow, it helps me reach a new audience, and it lets me know that this is helping someone, which just feels good. All you have to do is go to the show page of whatever app you're listening to and hit the little 5 stars. Or go to the comments section on YouTube and boom, that's it. And if you really want to show love, take a screenshot when you do it and tag me in your stories on social media at Change Made Easy, and I'll shout you out in an upcoming episode. All right, go leave that rating, and I'll see you back here every Tuesday and Thursday with new episodes of Change Made Easy.